A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. First part of Chapter 10. That Satan enticeth by our lust. The several ways by which he doth it. Of the power and danger of the violence of affections. The way, then, by which he doth entice is by stirring up our lust. By lust I mean those general desirings of our minds after any unlawful object which are forbidden in the 10th commandment. Thus we read of worldly lusts, of the lusts of the flesh, of lustings to envy, and, in a word, we read of divers lusts, the whole attempt and striving of corrupt nature, against the Spirit being set forth by this expression, of lusting against the Spirit, Titus 2:12, 1 Peter 2:18, James 4:5, Titus 3:3, Galatians 5:17. That Satan takes advantage of our own lusts, and so plows with our heifer, turning our own weapons against ourselves, is evident by the general vote of Scripture. The Apostle James, chapter 1:14, tells us that every temptation prevails only by the power and working of our own lusts. Satan is the tempter, but our lusts are the advantages by which he draws and enticeth. The corrupt principle within us is called flesh, but the way whereby it works, either in its own proper motion or is stirred up by the devil, is that of lust and affection. And therefore he that would stop that issue, must look to mortify it in its affections and lusts. Galatians 5:24. We are further told by John, 1 Epistle 2:16, that all those snares that are in the world, are only hazardous and prevailing by our lusts. More generally the Apostle Peter speaks, 2 Peter 1:4. The whole bundle of actual sins that have ever been in the world came in at this door. The corruption that is in the world is through lust. In the stirring up our lusts Satan useth no small art and subtlety. And ordinarily he worketh by some of these following ways. 1. First, he useth his skill to dress up an object of lust that it may be taking and alluring. He doth not content himself with a simple proposal of the object, but doth as it were paint and varnish it, to make it seem beautiful and lovely. Besides all that wooing, and importunity which he useth to the soul, by private and unseen suggestions, he hath no doubt a care to gather together, all possible concurring circumstances, by which the seeming goodness or conveniency of the object, is much heightened and enlarged. We see those that have skill to work upon the humors of men, place a great part of it, in the right circumstantiating emotion, and in taking the tempers and inclinations of men, at a right time. And they observe that the missing of the right season, is the hazard of the design, even there where the object and inclination, ordinarily are suitable. There is much in placing a picture in a right position, to give it its proper grace and luster in the eyes of the beholders. When a man is out of humor he nauseates his usual delights, and grows sullen to things of frequent practice. It is likely Eve was not a stranger to the tree of knowledge before the temptation, but when the serpent suggests the goodness of the fruit itself seems more beautiful and desirable, good for food, and pleasant to the eyes. Genesis 2:9. Though we are not able to find out the way of Satan's beautifying an object, that it may affect with more piercing and powerful delights, yet he that shall consider that not only prudence, in an advantageous management of things, adds an additional beauty to objects proposed, but also that art, by placing things in a right posture, may derive a radiancy, and beam of beauty and light upon them, as an ordinary piece of glass may be so posited to the sunbeams, that it may reflect a sparkling light as if it were a diamond. He that shall consider this, I say, will not think it strange for the devil to use some arts of this kind, for the adorning and setting off an object to the eye of our lusts. 2. Secondly, we have reason to suspect that he may have ways of deceit and imposture upon our senses. The deceits of the senses are so much noted, that some philosophers will scarce allow any credit to be given them, not that they are always deceitful, but that they are often so, and therefore always suspicious. The soul hath no intelligence but by the senses. It is then a business of easy belief, that Satan may not altogether slight this advantage, but that when he sees it fit for his purpose, he may impose upon us, by the deception of our eyes and ears. We little know how oft our senses have disguised things to us. In a pleasing object, our eyes may be as a magnifying or multiplying glass. In the first temptation Satan seems to have wrought both upon the object and also upon the senses. She saw it was good for food and pleasant. Who can question but that she saw the fruit before? But this was another kind of sight, of more power and attraction. An instance of Satan's cunning, in both the forementioned particulars we have from Austin, relating the story of his friend Alypius, who by the importunity of his acquaintance consented to go to the theatre, yet with a resolve not to open his eyes, lest the sight of these spectacles should entice his heart. But being there, The noise and sudden shouting of the multitude prevailed so far with him that he forgot his resolution. Takes the liberty to see what occasioned the shouting, and once seeing, is now so inflamed with delight, that he shouts as the rest do, and becomes a frequenter of the theatre as others. What was there to be seen and heard he knew before, by the relation of others, but now being present, his eyes and ears were by Satan, so heightened in their offices, that those bloody objects seemed pleasant beyond all that had been reported of them, and the lust of his heart drawn out, by Satan's cunning disposal of the object and senses. 3. Thirdly, there is no small enticement arising from the fitness and suitableness of occasion. An occasion exactly fitted, is more than half a temptation. This often makes a thief, an adulterer, etc. where the acts of these sins have their rise from a sudden fit of humor, which occasion puts them in, rather than from design or premeditation. Cunningly contrived occasions are like the danger of a precipice. If a man be so foolish as to take up a stand there, a small push will throw him over, though a far greater might not harm him if he were upon a level. It is Satan's cunning to draw a man within the reach of an occasion. All the resolves of Alypius were not safeguard to him, when once he was brought within hearing and sight of the temptation. If he had stayed at home, the hazard of Satan's suggestions, though earnest, had not been so much as the hearing of his ears and sight of his eyes. In 2 Corinthians 2:11, Paul's fears of Satan's taking advantage against the Corinthians did manifestly arise from the present posture of their church affairs, for if the excommunicated person should not be received again into the church, an ordinary push of temptation might either have renewed or confirmed their contentions, or precipitated them into an opinion of too much severity against an offending brother, and that their present frame made them more than ordinarily obnoxious to these snares, is evident from the Apostle's caution inserted here in this discourse, so abruptly, that any man may observe the necessity of the matter, and the earnestness of his affections did lead his pen. The souls of man have their general disgraces and disaffections, as our bodies have, from a lingering distemperature of the blood and humors, in which case, a small occasion, like a particular error of diet, in a declining body, will easily form that inclination into particular acts of sin. Thanks.